still alive, Ronnie?
Just about, I think, Roger.
Yeah, very good.
I've kind of felt myself all over. I think I'm all still here, just about.
Right. we've got a bit of rock music playing underneath. You hear that?
Yeah, where's that, Roger? Is that on your computer?
Well, you should be able to see it. If you go to brand on your screen, you'll be able to see it in blue. It just says rock.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
All clever stuff, you know, folks.
It is clever. You're far cleverer than me on these things.
Enough of that.
We'll have to say a few people, won't we?
Yeah. Deb sent us a very early thing saying that she won't be able to make it. Darn it, she said. Darn it. So
we'll say hello to Deb for when she watches the recording.
Yeah. I love it when North American people say darn it. Yeah. We once did a podcast with Will Tutland and he went dang. You know, that kind of very North American.
Oh, I know, yeah.
So hello to Amber. Here's Colleen. Hello, Michael. It's a bit snowy, and Michael said it's a bit snowy too. So,
yeah, it slightly snowed today, very slightly in the kind of in the West Midlands, but like it didn't really get going.
No, okay. So this my new favourite word is Sequani.
I know.
Yeah.
Or Sequani is the proper pronunciation of it. Sequani.
Is that a joke or is that real?
Well, it's what people have started calling it, which is very appropriate, really.
Yeah. I asked you last week where that name came from, and I can't remember what you said.
It was a Gallic tribe, wasn't it, or something? I don't know why they.
That's it. Yeah.
It
still couldn't work out why.
Trying to make themselves look a bit kind of.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Something
right.
Not
so
really.
So we're into this paint, flowers, and handcuffs, and you had the subtitle about groundbreaking, and I was thinking people might go, well, hang on, surely these kind of things have been going on for yonks.
No, not exactly like this. They haven't, but I think it's important to talk a bit about what actually happened. I've got a little bit of inside knowledge, like because my wife Louise took part in it and was one of the 5 women arrested, and basically, it was a week ago Saturday, probably about 10 days ago now. There was a day of action here in England against three laboratories that kind of, I think, it was organised by Camp Beagle, and I think it was because these 3 laboratories are supplied with beagles from MBR Acres, which is where Camp Beagle is. There's a laboratory called Sequani, which is at Ledbury, which is kind of in sort of western England, and then there are 2 laboratories, both called LabCorp, and now changed to LabCorps. And one's at Huntingdon, that's kind of Eastern England, and the other one's at Harrogate, which is like it's northeast England. And there were demos at these three laboratories all at the same time, and at Sequani there was a bit more than just an ordinary protest, because sort of while the kind of demonstration was going on, there's five women activists went across the road to the laboratory. They painted slogans using eco-friendly paint. They sourced eco-friendly paint to paint slogans in the laboratory, daub paint on the walls of the entrance. They scattered flowers around, and then 3 of them handcuffed themselves to the main gates, and the others kind of just sort of lay down, and eventually it took quite some while for the police to come, which is why they were able to do so much before the police arrived. Eventually the police came. I think a couple of police came first of all, and then a very large number of police arrived and arrested all 5 of them, and the ones with handcuffs, 2 of them had their own handcuffs swapped for police handcuffs. I mean, why they'd want to handcuff people who have made no effort to escape and have actually handcuffed themselves to a gate waiting to be arrested, why the police would then want to use their own handcuffs to handcuff those people, I don't really understand, but that's what they did. And then they were taken to two fairly nearby police stations, and then kind of released. 2 of them were released late that evening, and 3 in the early hours of the next morning. And I think they're
just go back a step. So people who had handcuffed themselves were then handcuffed.
Well, then, they cut the handcuffs, or got the handcuffs open and removed them from where they were locked on, and then they handcuffed them. The police then handcuffed them with their own handcuffs.
Oh yeah.
And and plus I think they also handcuffed the 2 women. There was 2 women that didn't handcuff themselves, but they kind of just, they just stayed there. Yeah, I think they kind of just sat on the ground. They were handcuffed as well, but which is crazy because you handcuff people to stop them getting away, don't you? But these people had made no effort to get away. They deliberately waited to be arrested. So why would the police handcuff them? It's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? But that's what happened anyway.
Oh, well, I guess that's you're formally under arrest, I suppose.
Kind of, they like putting handcuffs on people, don't they?
I think they do, yeah. Especially when they get it on the bone and it hurts. Remember all that?
I remember many times. I don't know whether they use the same handcuffs that we used to have, because they used to be there's a big bar, wasn't there? They used to go against that bone in your wrist, and it's really painful sometimes. They do it too tight.
Yeah. Do you remember there was always one on the transport, always one guy who could get his hand out of the handcuffs.
Yeah, because he had probably a little hand that made.
Well, it also just the way it all squished up.
He'd get the hand out. It's probably so that he could do a roll up or something.
So Mickey John saying it was brilliant action and that he was there. So
that's Mikey. Yeah, hi Mikey. Yeah. Mikey. Mikey, I think, did a couple of videos from there and kind of commentated on what was going on.
We got a video later, so maybe
we got one of the videos.
Yeah,
and it's certainly very well documented, and it was all over Facebook. The reason I think it's groundbreaking was there's been, obviously, over the years, been a lot of action against vivisection establishments. I mean, back in the day we had the ALF, people breaking in, rescuing the animals, doing really quite serious damage, but always attempting to get away. We always attempted to get away. We didn't hang around for the police to arrest us. We were gone, weren't we? Some of us got arrested later after they investigated, but we weren't going to wait. We weren't going to hang around, you see. So, and then
that'd be a daft thing to do, really, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah. I think because of the kind of extreme amount of damage we used to do, we kind of, we would have been facing. In fact, some people did get, many years in prison for those actions. And then more recently, we have had actions where people have waited around to be arrested. I mean, for instance, there were 2 actions that or handed themselves into the police afterwards. There were 2 actions at MBR Acres where people went in and rescued beagles, and they either waited to be arrested or they handed themselves into the police, you see. But that was rescue. That was a rescue of beagles. This is the first time there's been an action involving kind of damage, or a certain amount of damage, where people have, not attempted to get away, where they've...
So the charges are liable to be more serious, aren't they?
Well, kind of yes and no. But I mean, there's 4 of them under investigation for criminal damage, and the other one is she's not under investigation for criminal damage, but it's some kind of offence under the refusing to move when she was requested to, or something.
The Refusing to Move Act.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So that's but the damage the damage isn't didn't amount to anything very, very serious, and it was more for the kind of impact of it.
You went back. You said about the eco-friendly paint. So was that does it wash off then?
It washes off, and if when it goes into the environment, it doesn't because a lot of paints have some very harmful substances in them. You wouldn't want them going down the drain and stuff, but this stuff was kind of
I mean, you see, that'll mitigate against the criminal damage charges.
Well, I mean, I think it washed off. I think there's still very small traces of it there from what I've heard, but I think most of it kind of washed off. So that would kind of make it less in that that
you'll have to trot down there with one of your little scrubby things from
they're all out there with toothbrushes now, all in the crevices.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so it's the first time anything kind of exactly like this has kind of happened, and kind of what interests me about this is in the sense that it's kind of so repeatable. You see, the thing is, if you have an action, you see, direct action has changed from back in the day when we did it, and it's kind of had to change, and it's kind of had to change because you kind of can't get away with stuff anymore because there's so much surveillance everywhere. I mean, that place is that place Sequani is just cameras everywhere. All over the place, and it's the same with any of these places. Even kind of smaller, places that breed animals. I mean, going back to the kind of 1970s, 80s, we'd do raids on animal breeding places. They'd have no security at all. They'd have no cameras. The only real security they'd have would be like a lock on the door or a padlock and a chain that would be easy. You could get a pair of bolt cutters and go through it. But now it's so much easier to have all the security because we're in the digital age, and so it's really difficult to do stuff now.
It's obviously doesn't go straight through to the cop shop though, because it took them so long to arrive. So,
well, no, I just think that's the state of the police. I think it's just the police are just so stretched. Yeah. They're just so.
My mum, right, was a bingo manager, and she had this state-of-the-art security system. You'll never guess what this was. So it was like a record player, right, which was connected to the police station, and so you had to set it up with a needle on the intro bit, right, and then if the alarm went off, something would ring the police station, and then when they answered, it would start the record player.
that's real Heath Robinson. That's that real old school security, isn't it? That is like, because people had to think things like that in the old days when there was no computers and stuff. But you see, you can't do stuff now, really, and those days are gone. To think that you can do something like really big and get away with it, you kind of can't. So really, in a sense, what's happened now is people are starting to do direct action where they're not aiming to get away. I mean, for instance, we've had going back a while. I think that the last one might have been pre-COVID. Was Meet the Victims, where people are going into just kind of invading these animal farms and taking photographs and stuff. And then the police come eventually and evict them. It's happening in the USA, isn't it, with DXE? They've gone in and they've rescued. There was some piglets rescued, wasn't there, over there? And of course, it's kind of happening now. It's been happening over here now with Animal Rebellion, where they're doing stuff and not, they're not attempting to get away. Hanging around and waiting for the police to arrest them, or
But you said, right, that this one is repeatable, but doesn't that mean that any smallish charges they're going to ratchet up? That's what happens, doesn't it?
Well, you see, the thing is that you see, the kind of reason it's sort of repeatable compared with other actions is the other type of action we've had against animal experiments over here, kind of direct action. Is there's two. There were the two actions at MBR Acres where dogs were rescued, and on both occasions the people either waited around or they gave themselves up. And I think on both occasions, I think the charges may have been dropped. They certainly don't seem to have appeared in court for those things.
Yeah, but they're not going to keep doing that, are they, either?
Well, no, but you see, the things you can't, keeping on rescuing animals from places kind of is limited because it depends on homes being available for those animals. You see, so you can only do it a limited number of times because it's so difficult to get homes for animals now. I think it always has been, hasn't it?
It wouldn't be too hard for beagles because they're so kind of popular, aren't they?
Well, yeah, but I think even with them, there's a kind of sort of limit on, and also it's a more complicated operation. It's a type of operation that takes, because the thing is, it's getting the animals away, isn't it? The people might not be bothered about not getting away, but you want to get the animals away, don't you? You don't want them to be.
Well, that's always the problem, isn't it? Yeah.
So you see, but something like this, where you're going to a place and you're kind of, doing an action like happened at Sequani, it's kind of repeatable. It's quite simple to do, and it can be highly effective in terms of kind of gaining publicity. And the kind of, I mean, there's going to be, it probably will be criminal charges arising from it, but they're not the sort of charges where they're going to throw the key away. It's not the sort of charge where people are going to get kind of years in prison. So it's something that's kind of.
Oh, they didn't even throw the key away from you, Ronnie, did they?
Well, no, they just hid it. They hid the key for years.
For 10 years.
They hid the key. Yeah. I think there were some people wanted it thrown away, but thankfully it wasn't.
Well, yeah, but that was people on our side.
oh yeah, I think there were. Yeah, there were.
Hey, going back to the beagles, I remember because if they come out of a lab, it's really good to go to a sympathetic vet just to check them over medically, and just in case they've done something. Yeah. I remember one guy, he wanted to have a look in the ear, looked at the ear, like this, and there's a tattoo number in there. Yeah, and he goes, "Oh, wrong ear." He goes,
because they're microchipped now. They tend to be microchipped rather than tattooed.
Oh, there would be, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you can get. I mean, vets have got a detector, haven't they? Yeah. Find out where it is, kind of thing.
Yeah. There was a. I've told this story before, but there may be people that listening that haven't heard it. But I had a vet contact me, and back in the days where ALF, vet contact me and said, I want to help, and obviously one of these things like removing tattoos from the ears of rescue. It's mainly dogs, but it could be other animals as well. That's something that kind of a vet can do. And obviously,
you should have said, if we can bring some farmers and vivisectors to you, can you put them to sleep?
Put them to sleep, yeah. yeah, that would have been good. Yeah, humanely, of course. But anyway, this guy got in touch, and he didn't live far from me, so a few of us went to see him. We went to see this vet, and he said he was a vegan and everything, this guy. So we went to see him. We were chatting to him, right? And obviously we needed to be able to trust him. And he had an office upstairs, and the phone went in his office upstairs. He had to go and answer it. And while he was up in the office, we searched his fridge to make sure he was vegan. We searched his fridge. It's like somebody kept looking out at the bottom of the stairs if he was coming down. We
really did the vegan police thing then.
Yeah, vegan, but he was vegan. There wasn't anything animal products in his fridge, so he was okay. But you have to be careful. But he turned out to be a really good guy. But yes, you see, so it's and the other thing that was kind of I kind of liked about it was that it was autonomous. In other words, we've had these actions happening. There has been direct action going on already, as I've already described, but tending to be organised by sort of fairly kind of large organisations. Like, for instance, you've got DXE, Animal Rebellion. They've done some big stuff. But this wasn't like that. This was just a group of people who got to, I mean, all these people kind of previously have been involved in animal rebellion, so they've kind of had experience of direct action. But this action was just some people getting together and just doing it themselves. So it was autonomous. You see, and I kind of like that. I like that because it kind of has echoes of the ALF, because, you know, the ALF wasn't like something that, you know, this big organization that kind of really sought to control people or lay down loads of rules and regulations and stuff. What it was we had some basic principles, didn't we? That, for instance, that, you know, we weren't going to go out and kind of we were going to avoid injuring, you know, other people, or, you know, whether those be human or non-human animals. We you know, we had a principle that it was kind of we weren't going to cause harm in that way in our actions, and that our actions were going to be against property, or it's going to be animal rescue. That was a very strong principle of the ALF. And basically, you know, as long as people kind of stuck to that, they could.
Yeah, but the point, the rest was up to them. That's
they do the action. So like, it kind of, there was an attempt to control people and make them abide by rules and regulations. There wasn't this huge constitution or a manifesto, or, you know, like kind of membership or anything like that. It was autonomous, and I think that was a factor in why it kind of spread everywhere, because it was so easy for people to get involved and so easy for people to do it, because we didn't really attempt to kind of control people. It wasn't like some kind of authorization or orders had to come from the top to enable someone to do something. They were just able to do it, you see. And I kind of like that, and I like the fact that this was people getting together, because that's repeatable, because anyone can, you know, could get together, you know, like this and do, and kind of, you know, all right, they got to be prepared to kind of face the music and, you know, face a, you know, criminal charge, even though, you know, they may not be the most serious charges in the world. You know, people still have to kind of take that into account. But so that's what I'm saying, you know, that the fact that it was autonomous makes it, you know, it increases the repeatability of it, because you don't have to have instructions from anyone on high or authorization from anyone on high in order to go and do something like this. You know,
well, let's help people kind of understand that, and then they can just get together. I say one of the great things about being an island is that people won't follow any rules. So I was part of a really early DXE. When DXE was really new, they had their own house and everything. Somebody from Ireland went over, came back with the idea, and they decided to do it. But they would keep getting these orders from North America saying, right, the next one is going to be this, and you've got to say this and all that. And they just rewrite the statement because it wasn't right space and stuff. And so that, and it's the same with AV. The AV didn't really take off in Ireland because people wouldn't follow the rules.
Yeah. We see this is the thing, and what we've had kind of sort of a bit like creeping into the movement, you know, the animal rights movement, animal liberation movement, is people, you know, feeling they can't do anything unless it's kind of part of this kind of global organization. You know, you've got these kind of global organizations, haven't you? Got like AV and SAVE, you know, these are global organizations, you know, and a lot of people feel, oh, I can't do anything unless it's kind of part of that.
You know, in one sense, it's counter-revolutionary, because the idea is that you want people to think for themselves.
Yes.
You know, not kind of here's a bunch of rules, do that. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of, so.
And it was kind of much more like that back in the day. You know, you go back to the 70s and 80s, you kind of didn't, you sort of didn't have that. I think one of the things that kind of helped that proliferate is, of course, the internet, because it's easier to have a global organization, isn't it, now, because of the internet. And that didn't used to happen. We had national organizations more so, didn't we?
Yeah, but the point there, though, would be that what should have happened there is that somebody came up with an idea, they put it on the internet, and then other people could adapt it to their local region and all the rest of it and their own circumstances. Instead of trying to kind of make it a franchise or something.
Yes, yeah. You see, and it's the same with everything. I mean, we're talking here about, you know, direct action, but I believe very much the same with regard to vegan education. that people don't need to be. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with people going doing a cube or going doing, you know, something that is part of a bigger organization. I'm kind of, you know, I'm not against them doing that, but what I'm saying is don't just do that. There's lots of things that you can do of your own accord, that you can I love rules. Yeah, well, maybe not go into that too much. You know, but if people start acting of their own accord and acting autonomously, you can do a hell of a lot more. It's like I always say that kind of people go into big cities to join up with these kind of do the AV and the stuff like that, but where they actually live, there's no outreach. So why don't they instigate?
It should be more spontaneous, really.
Why don't they instigate? You get together a few vegans locally, and instigate outreach in their local area, even if it's a small way, even if it's just delivering leaflets or doing an info stall at a community event or something. That people you can do stuff yourself. Don't have to be told to do it by some big organisation. And if we are ever going to have, you know,
you old radical, you, Ronnie.
Yeah, if you're ever going to have like widespread vegan education or widespread action of any sort for animal liberation, we have to have more people taking the initiative and doing it themselves, rather than waiting to be told what to do by someone else. But the other interesting thing was this was all it was all women that took part in this. I kind of don't think that wasn't by design. It would, you know, they didn't say, right, we're only going to have women involved in this. I think it just turned out that it was all women. But I think that's what's again evidence of that, like prevalence of women in our movement. I mean, we spoke on another about Geordie Kasmit-Jana. He's done an article about this, didn't he? About women in the in the movement, and that's on vegan. It's on Vegan for the Animals, isn't it? It's on that website.
Why don't we need in this movement more uppity, autonomous women?
Well, yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? That it was, you know, you don't need some big bloke to go along and do things like this, and it was interesting that while this was going on, and while Louise was being arrested, I was down in the town helping with an information stall. We had an information stall in the town to educate local people that there was this laboratory at the edge of their town that a lot of them weren't really aware of, or they knew there was some sort of facility. They didn't know that the animals were.
Well, there you go. See, Ronnie, if they'd have done a TikTok live stream from there, you could have shown it to people.
Yeah, it's probably something worth people thinking of. I mean, there's plenty of videos taken, but I'm not sure that any went on TikTok. But you see,
go live on Facebook as well, can't you?
Yeah. Oh, you can. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. There were live streams on Facebook. Yeah, it was live streamed on the Camp Beagle page, and I think it might have been live streamed elsewhere as well. But this information store, and also giving people information about how they themselves can combat animal experimentation, like by boycotting charities like British Heart Foundation, for instance, Cancer Research UK, that fund animal experiments. And the interesting thing was that the other three people that were at the stall, they were women as well. So I was the only man out of four people on that stall. You know, the demo that took place outside, though, yeah, there were many involved in that, but we do seem to have like a prevalence of women in the movement, and certainly a prevalence of women activists. And I think that kind of, what does that say? Does that say something about men? That they're kind of...
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I know that some of the, as it were, feminist critique of the ALF is the kind of macho image, but they kind of often miss out that some of the ALF cells were almost exclusively women anyway. Yeah.
So. And there's some brilliant women in the ALF. I think probably one of the reasons why the women aren't so well known is because they kind of didn't get caught, and perhaps they were cleverer than the men that they didn't get caught.
yeah.
But yeah, no. So there's great women activists in the ALF. No.
I think we should change tack on that one.
But
it makes it look bad. So
yeah,
are we going to show a few pictures?
Let's show some pictures of the action so people can see what actually went on.
Okay. So this is your title. We got a comment about the title. It's rather kinky.
Well, it's it kind of could be. Well, is this a kinky title, or is that Colleen's mind?
Well, we can let everybody else decide that. I'm not getting
I'd have
involved.
never thought of this as being kinky at all. That never would have occurred to me, really.
No. Okay. Right. So the first one.
Yeah, that's the protest outside. It was across the other side of the road. I mean, there's a regular protest there, like every Monday, where there's just a small number of people outside, which kind of, it was sort of really, I suppose the main thing that does is, the Monday one is just raise awareness. It's a fairly busy road, and cars come past and they see the placards and that, and makes them aware of what's going on at that place. But obviously that was a bigger protest on this occasion, and that's across the other side of the road from the laboratory, and that's yeah. I mean, there's a kind of emphasis on beagles, because this is one of the places that is supplied with beagles from MBR Acres, where Camp Beagle is, and it's Camp Beagle kind of organised this day of action, but that laboratory has other animals there as well. They have, I think they have mini pigs, they have rabbits, they have rats, they have mice, and all those animals are just as important as beagles, of course. And it's just as wrongful to do experiments on them as to do experiments on dogs. And we kind of need to. I think you can use the beagles to attract attention to what's going on, but you very quickly then need to say to people that it's just as wrongful to do experiments on any animal.
Yeah, because that's always the problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
I like the idea that we're talking about a DIY action, and now we got some DIY banners.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that, because if I think back to our street work in Dublin, we had a lot of leaflets which were just simply photocopied, and some of them were just black and white. But we also had, say, like Go Vegan World leaflets, which are kind of glossy and all that. But people didn't seem to make any different, and they didn't go for the good quality ones. They went for what they thought looked interesting. And so again, you don't need fancy banners and stuff to do this kind of stuff, which is great. Reduces.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot you can do. I mean, the stall we use, for instance, locally for our vegan outreach, is kind of totally cobbled together. It's kind of like all the posters on it are ones that I've kind of printed out and stuck together and stuff, but it still looks all right.
Our stuff was held together by gaffer tape. I used to think that Declan had shares in the gaffer tape company because he used to use so much of it. So this is the Sequani one then. This is across the road still again, yeah. That's
the other side of the road to the laboratory, because it's hard to stand on. The kind of frontage of the lab is really quite close to the road, and they put these barriers across the main gate, which the activists moved, and the activists moved the barriers, lifted them away from the front of the gate. So it can be it's difficult to stand over the other side. People do stand in some places over the other side, but it's mainly across the road where
it looks like a fairly busy road too, right? So
it is fairly busy. Yeah.
I must say I like this this slogan better than the ones that focus on beagles, to be honest. But
yes, absolutely, yeah, because it's all animals, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
And that's the stall we did while all that was going on outside the lab, and the activism. That's the stall we had. A stall in the Ledbury town centre. Educating people. That's me there with me. The placard around my neck.
Somebody put a label on you in case you got lost, is it, Ronnie, or what?
Yeah, but those leaflets I was giving out were animal aid leaflets. What's good about them is kind of, they tell people how what people themselves can do, to combat animal experiments by boycotting the charities that fund the experiments, but also if anyone that goes to the aid website can learn about veganism as well, and can learn about all the other ways that animals are oppressed. So it's kind of, you know,
do you have like general vegan leaflets there as well?
No, I don't think they did. I don't think they did. And normally, if I organise a stall, I'll give people vegan booklets if anyone, as well as whatever it is. But you see, anyone getting the animal aid leaflets, if they're interested enough to go on the website, they'll see about veganism pretty much straight away.
Yeah, well, obviously, see, with the upsurge again with anti-vivisection, it's brought back the issue. Well, it's not brought it back really. It's kind of created a new issue really, because it wasn't really back in the day that nobody would kind of almost like go, "Are you vegan?" That wouldn't be anybody's first question really, would it? When you met somebody at a demo, whereas now it probably would be. And so it comes back to this thing about anti-vivisectionists not being vegan, you know?
Well, I think it would be more that if someone said they weren't vegan, you'd be kind of a little bit shocked, because you'd kind of expect them to be, wouldn't you? I think it's kind of more that way round, because of course, you know, veganism is so much more prevalent now. I mean, back in the day, people weren't vegan, and they'd get involved in anti-vivisection, or they'd get involved in anti-hunting, you know, like the HANDCUFFS.
There'd be a lot of vegetarians though, wouldn't they, Ronnie?
Yeah, there's a lot more people that are vegetarian back then. You don't really get that now, because I think a lot of people just go straight to being vegan now, don't they? But a lot of people, you'd get a lot of people coming into these, you know, into these kind of campaigns, and because there were vegans already in the campaigns, they would then veganize the people that came into the campaign, and it was that way. Whereas a lot of people now come to these things, not everyone, but I think a lot of them are probably already vegan. I mean, a lot of people have gone vegan through, for instance, Camp Beagle. I think people have gone along there, you know, and rubbed shoulders with vegans, and then they've become vegan.
I should call it Camp Vegan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we have. Yeah, there are camp vegans, but different. There's camp out vegans, aren't there? Vegan camp out.
Oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have brought that up. Okay.
No, that's all right. No, it's good to see that a few of these camp outs are being held at animal sanctuaries to raise funds for the sanctuaries this year. So that's you know, that's a good thing, and that's certainly, I'll be going to one of those rather than the big one. And this is yeah.
So that's your eco paint.
Eco paint, yeah, and certainly kind of, you know, it was still able to kind of send a message, and they all had these kind of coats, or most of them were wearing these kind of sort of vivisectors coats with slogans on them as well.
You'd have preferred a mix of moral and scientific, would you?
Well, you see, yeah, this is the thing, and probably talk a bit more about this later, that I think that we have to emphasize the moral argument against animal experiments. That's the most important argument, and it's irrefutable, because you see, the thing is, if you that kind of you know, there are an increasing number of doctors and scientists who are opposed to animal experimentation, and you know, some of them even set up organizations to kind of develop and promote non-animal methods, for instance. But nevertheless, you know, it kind of, you can get into a kind of debate with someone claiming to be a scientist, who says, well, I'm a scientist and I know that these experiments work, and blah 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 blah, right? But you see, you present that person with the moral argument, and there's no, you know, they can't, you know, they can't overcome that.
Well, so the weird thing about the moral argument in relation to vivisection is the fact that normally people go, oh well, you know, we're superior, we're different,
exactly.
And then say, well, does that mean that the tests don't give you any data? Oh no, we're similar because, and all that, and so they try and claim that we're similar and different.
You see the thing that you see that, you know, in what way are they saying that humans are superior to non-human animals.
Well, all the ways that they normally say, rationality, language, all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, kind of intelligence, but like, would they experiment on humans that lack those things? Would they experiment on young babies? Would they experiment on certain people with learning difficulties who lack those abilities? No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. So they're experimenting on those non-human animals simply because they're non-human. It isn't to do with intelligence. It isn't to do with rationality, and so it's a prejudice, because they wouldn't experiment.
They probably want to. I mean, the logic of vivisection is to do it on humans, because then you're getting past all the species.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, they kind of. And I dare say that a few of them would want to, but they're not going to say that, are they?
No,
and
but
that would be totally unacceptable to the public.
The weird thing about that, Ronnie, is that some people say, "Oh, well, during the Holocaust, the Nazis banned animal experiments." First of all, that's not true, but they were doing it on the right species, because they didn't have any morals against doing it on humans.
Yeah.
And so, what's the point of doing something on other animals if you're doing it on humans?
Oh yes, absolutely, because you're going to get more accurate results, aren't you, using the same species? But you see, it's exactly the same. The kind of mindset's exactly the same. It's supremacism. The Nazis believed that the Aryan race was superior to other races, and so therefore it was okay to experiment on people of other races, such as Jewish people, for instance. And it's exactly the same mindset, isn't it? These experimenters, they've got this this view that humans are superior to other animals, and so therefore it's okay to experiment on the other animals. Exactly the same mindset as the Nazis had.
Yeah, controversially so. Let's move on.
Yeah, this is kind of what this is about is that there was a raid on
this is the 18, isn't it?
Yeah, the 18 MBR acres. It was way back. Was it December, where they actually rescued 20 beagles, but 2 got taken back by the police, and Animal Rebellion named them Libyan Love. And there was a big campaign for their the release of Libyan Love, but sadly it didn't happen. And I think the main reason it didn't happen was because the intervention of the Home Office, to say on no account must these dogs be given back to the campaigners. And it is possible that Libyan Love did end up at Sequani, because beagles are very frequently supplied to Sequani from MBR acres.
Do you think they'll be dead now then?
After this period of time, yes, probably. Sadly, yes. Yeah,
because I mean they were describing them as contaminated, weren't they, because of the rescue?
Well, this is kind of what they used to say that back in the day, didn't they, when animals were rescued? Oh, you've come in the laboratory, you've contaminated all these animals, blah blah blah. I mean, it's hard to, when you see the conditions, from the videos and that the beagles are kept in MBR acres. How can they be worse contaminated than the terrible conditions that they're kept in? It's just mad. It's just bullshit. I think it's just bullshit.
Well, I guess it's the difference is they would say that the activists don't have the same level of biosecurity than the
but I don't see what when you see the videos, it's hard to see what level of biosecurity they've got there anyway.
Well, I guess it depends on their procedures, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's something they always kind of come out with. But kind of what happened to those dogs, no one knows. I mean, I think as I say, I think the Home Office intervened. I think if that hadn't been the case, then those dogs might have been kind of relinquished to the activists. That I don't know whether the laboratory might have felt it was a good propaganda thing to let the breeding place might have thought it was a good propaganda thing to let them go back to the activists, possibly. But of course, if the Home Office step in, they rule everything, don't they? And they're very, we've got a very hard line government at the moment. They're determined not to let protesters, get away with anything, aren't they? As we've seen with the legislation that's going through and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, if I was wearing that lab coat, there's a word on that I'd change.
Yeah, it's love, isn't it? Yeah. Well, yes. yeah. I suppose it depends on kind of what the word love means, all sorts of things, doesn't it? There's lots of different kind of variations of love. So
it means Albert Lee, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is it Albert Lee? Remember the band? There's a band called Love, wasn't there?
I think there was. Yeah.
Oh yeah, very famous.
Yeah, I think that kind of was. Was it one of them, like a kind of hippie type band? Was it?
Yeah, I think it was a bit psychedelic and all that.
Oh yeah, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand any of that. I was pleased when the punk came and blew all that away, to be honest. But yeah.
Oh, there's a question.
Well, did you love Roger? Yeah, there's a sense in which I do love Roger. Yeah, I mean, not kind of. In some ways, yeah. You could say, like if it's a kind of form of respect, isn't it? And kind of, admiration for someone and stuff like that. I think, yeah.
I suppose it is. So moving on. I love this, and I'll tell you why. In one of the Father Ted episodes, the Irish kind of comedy, they have a demonstration outside a cinema, and they have kind of stopped this kind of thing or down with this kind of thing, and this reminded me of that.
Yeah, down with this sort of thing. It's amusing because the woman who plays Pauline, name's Pauline someone.
Yeah,
the woman.
She used to come to the vegetarian day when we used to.
Yeah, and who played Mrs. Doyle in Father Ted.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and she's a big campaigner against the greyhound racing industry, and every year they have a this award ceremony for the British Greyhound, the Greyhound Board of Great Britain, I think it is now, and they have it at a hotel, often in London. I think it was somewhere else this year, but she went along to one of those, and she actually had a placard saying "Down with this sort of thing."
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we used to have a poster with her on it as Mrs. Doyle, and it said "Go vegan, go on, go on, go on."
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, people that have never watched Father Ted won't know what the hell we're talking about. But I'd say if you can find, it's a comedy series called Father Ted, and if you can find it somewhere on the internet, it might be on YouTube. It's kind of well worth.
It's quite controversial now, isn't it? It's in the Roland's thing that the writers made some dodgy statements about trans, I think.
Oh yeah, I kind of think so. But there's none of that in the kind of show, I don't think. But it was like, yeah, I mean, and it is like it's actually probably the best comedy series I've ever watched on the TV, Father Ted. And I mean, it's taken the piss out of the Catholic Church, really. And
yeah, no, you wouldn't do that now, would we? What's your all-time favorite?
But my mum was a Catholic, and she absolutely loved Father Ted. She absolutely loved the program.
Well, Margaret Thatcher used to like Yes Minister. So
yeah. It was But I think it stopped this. I think they probably they had to use short words because of the space on the wall. So I suppose
just find a bigger wall. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's probably why it kind of says that.
Stop this. Everybody's favorite scene in Father Ted is the same. It's the one with the little cow, right? And Father Ted explained to Dougal. He said, this one's small and those are far, far away. Remember that scene? Yeah,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, yeah. It's very. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. And that's one of the women being. She refused to walk, and they had to carry her, and they put and it kind of made it more difficult because I think they handcuffed her, and they kind of and somebody shouted out. It was funny because on the video somebody shouted out, "You didn't have to handcuff her," and they said, "Well, she could," she could have walked if she'd wanted to, and then the person said, well, you could have not arrested her if you'd wanted to, because it was up to them whether, obviously they don't have to arrest people, do they? But
it's when you go limp, it's very difficult.
Yeah, she went limp. Yeah. So it made it difficult for them. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to pick up a child who just goes all floppy. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the smiling copper. It must be weird now. I imagine policing has changed a little bit now because there's so many cameras about that they have to do a little bit of PR.
They have to kind of put on a smiley face, don't they? Yeah. But, in general, I mean, Louis said that the police were really pretty decent, and they were okay, and they were, they weren't like nasty or anything. She got treated very well.
Those arrested me were decent.
Yeah, they seem to be. Yeah, they didn't really,
Well, again, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I once spoke to a copper, and he said it was quite difficult going to demos because you might actually agree with what the demonstration stands for.
Yeah.
But you kind of got to do your job, So
yeah, you see, I'm sure a lot of those police will have their own dogs at home, and they are stealing your freedom. Nice, isn't it? Well, yeah, of course it is. It is stealing someone's freedom, but I suppose you'd rather they were gentle with you rather than rough with you while they're doing it, I suppose.
You can take our life, but you can't take our freedom.
And that's Louise being arrested. That guy in the yellow jacket, he's the chief superintendent. The chief superintendent came to arrest Louise.
All right, he wanted to have a go on the megaphone, did he?
That's the megaphone. That's the megaphone I spoke about in was it the last program we did? I took that. We hadn't used that for years, that megaphone. It wasn't working. I took it to the local repair cafe and had it mended.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's the same megaphone. Now, we got that megaphone. Last time Louise used the megaphone when she glued herself to the gate of MBR Acre, the police confiscated the megaphone and they had it for ages. I think they've got it back now because it was belonged to the camp. Hopefully they got it back. But that one, Louise made sure that was that was given to one of the other protesters to take away, and the police didn't retain it. So thankfully we've kind of got that back.
There's some good
yeah, there was a guy. There was a few people taking photos, and there's some really good images from it. But she was put in I think they put the other people in the van, but they put her in the back, Louise in the back of a police car, because of her walking difficulties and stuff.
Yeah, she has it easy, really, doesn't she? Eh?
Well, I think they're kind of very wary if someone's in a wheelchair. They'll kind of, not all police stations can cope with people in wheelchairs. She kind of, when she got arrested the last time, they couldn't take her to the nearest police station because it didn't really have facilities for like wheelchairs, so she had to go somewhere else.
Pat Louise stole Maz's bag.
That's my that's my bag. Yeah, I mean, it's full. I mean, that bag's a nightmare. It's like finding anything in that bag. It's like she's got everything in that bag normally. I think she slimmed it down to go on the demo.
All right. took the kitchen sink out and all that.
Yeah, all the stuff out of there. Yeah.
Okay. This one's really interesting because you got grumpy vegan police officer. And the smiling activist, which is
she was, yes, very smiley, yeah. But I think they're taking it to put her in that van there.
She can't be a real activist because she can walk.
yeah.
Right, I think we're getting close to the end now. I think these are the last two. I put these together because I wonder whether you were saying about no rules. I wonder whether you had to have this kind of completely pissed off face.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, it's sat on. It's kind of not very comfortable sitting on the hard concrete. And there's, they both got handcuffs on. I think those are their own handcuffs, which were then replaced by police handcuffs.
Oh, there's a big argument going on about this bag still. So that's the reason that Louise was arrested, nothing to do with Sequani.
Oh yeah, for stealing mags. Yeah, she's going to be having additional charges for stealing a mag.
Theft. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the problem is, we provided them with photographic evidence now.
Well, she probably. But yeah, but what if she says that the paint in the bag actually belonged to Maz, and that he's implicated then, isn't he? In the... So you need to be careful there, Maz. You don't want to kind of end up on a charge.
They've written property of Ronnie Lee on it or something.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Right, so we've got a bit of I'm going to just change the screen. We've got a bit of this is Louise giving a bit of a talk or chanting and stuff with that megaphone.
Yeah, she's using the megaphone.
Yeah. Now, when we tried it out earlier, it was a bit low, so let's hope it's going to work a bit better this time.
I'm going to get angry with you that we are going to take direct action. What we have today, because it is wrong what you're doing, it is morally bankrupt. We know millions of animals are suffering all over the world because of this edict by the big pharmaceutical industry, such as yours. We know about your accounts in the Cayman Islands. Yeah, you're making plenty of blood money because it's lucrative. That's the truth of it, isn't it? It's all about money and greed, not about their lives, not about them as individuals. It's human supremacism that puts these animals where they are. It's our arrogance towards them that matters, isn't it? That's all you care about. Yeah, we are fucking angry, and so we well should be. And anybody who loves animals and respects animals and wants animal liberation wants the same thing.
Yeah, well, Louise just saved herself there because she said respect.
Yes. You can see there's the activists are still spraying the paint because it actually took really quite a long time for the police to arrive. When they did arrive, it was only 2 coppers, I think, and then a load of coppers then turned up. But you see, back in the day, a demo like that, the police would have been there right from the beginning, wouldn't they? If going back to
well, Operation Valentine, they weren't, were they?
Well, they weren't there. No, that's true. They did. They did that. No, they were. Yeah, but they didn't know. But you see, it wasn't. That demo wasn't. I don't know whether that demo was publicly announced. You see, on Operation Valentine, there was a demo and a raid at the same time. But I think the demo was like word of mouth. Get people on the demo. But this demo was, those 3 demos of which this one was a part were like publicly announced. It was on social media. The police would have known there was going to be a demo there.
It was that word peaceful. It completely took them by surprise.
Well, I think they just. I don't think they got the resources. So back in the day that was announced as a demo, there would have been some police there. Maybe 1 or 2, but there wasn't any. And so that enabled them to get a lot done before the police came.
Yeah, and another thing that can't happen now is what used to happen with the NAL thing is if it was a laboratory, they would have people in pay phones all around ringing the police station, which they knew the lab would be trying to ring, right?
Oh, to block the lines.
Yeah, to block the lines. Well, that wouldn't work now, would it?
Well, you don't ring a particular police station now. You ring a central number, don't you? You can't ring. You can't find a number. Okay. You can't find a number for an individual police station. Certainly not in England. I don't think. But what was interesting, I like what Lewis said on the megaphone there. I like what she said about, human supremacism, about human arrogance is the reason why those animals are in there. I really like that because, that is the fundamental reason why those animals are in there. It's the fundamental reason why people go hunting. It's the fundamental reason why people consume animal products. It's the fundamental reason for all these forms of animal oppression. It's human supremacism. And we need to be saying this more, and we need to be talking about it more. And we don't hear people say it. Because if we don't challenge and defeat human supremacism, we aren't going to achieve animal liberation. We have to kind of, have to talk about that.
Oh, it's all about cruelty, Ronnie. I mean, I'm distressed that all those banners didn't say, "Don't be cruel." I am.
Well, they'll claim that the trouble is, if you say that, they claim they're not cruel. I mean, they kind of do anyway. They say, "Oh, well, the animals are all anesthetized and they don't suffer." I mean, that's bullshit anyway. But they're able to claim that. Whereas if you're talking about, it's the fundamental wrong is that those animals are imprisoned in that place in the first place and that they're being used. That's the fundamental wrong, isn't it? And that's, comes about as a result of human supremacism, and which is the fundamental cause of why that's happening in the first place. And it's what links all these things together. It's what links all these various forms of the oppression of other animals that people are campaigning about. Like, we talk about single issues. People are campaigning, like against animal experiments, against hunting, against, what remains of the fur trade, I suppose. And all these zoos and circuses, all these things. What links these things together is human supremacism. That's why those things are being done to animals. So you challenge human supremacism, you challenge all of it. And it's really important.
Hello.
You got a pussycat. I was surprised I haven't got one. I normally have one like bothering me and trying to take over from me, but I think they've just had their food, so they're probably all asleep now.
Yeah, she's getting on a bit now, and I think she's pretty deaf now. But also, I mean, like for many years she would never come on your knee, but she started to do that. But now she wants me to put a cushion on it first before she'll get on now. So
it might be to do with age. You notice there's one or two of ours that didn't used to go on your knee, and they do now because they think they're older and they think, I can just go on someone's knee and go to sleep.
She'll never sit down. She actually just paces around on your knee for a bit.
Right. Yeah. But so I thought that was good. I thought that was good that was mentioned, and also I think you've got another picture there, haven't you? That's come from a newspaper article. Yeah, there was an article. There was I did a press release about it, and we got an article about it in a local newspaper.
That's the forgotten art, isn't it? Press releases.
Yeah, it is, and it's like it's a real shame people don't do it, because it's another way. Like, people will do a demo or they'll do, some sort of action, and the thing is, it's important to remember that local newspapers, or it might do, this got some national media. I mean, not necessarily this press release, but the story about the action at Sequani. It got on the BBC News website, and it got a little bit of national media. It got in the local newspaper and the county newspaper. But I kind of did a press release to our local newspaper, because obviously they've got an angle. It's a local woman who's involved in this, and it was like half a page in there with that picture of Louise being arrested by the chief superintendent is in there. And this is, part of the quote from Louise. And once again, although she mentions that, scientific invalidity of it, she talks about human supremacism, the arrogant and rational belief that humans are somehow more important than other sentient animals. And it's really important we keep saying this. We keep reiterating that, because this is the fundamental reason.
There's a lot going on there. I mean, she's obviously also saying that we're animals, which is a good thing to say too. So there's a lot going on in that.
There's a lot going on. Yeah, you see, and this is we kind of need to be. We have to challenge the oppression of other animals at a fundamental level. We have to challenge the fundamental reason they're oppressed, and so often that doesn't happen. People kind of are hitting, somewhere else, like they may be talking about cruelty. They're talking about it being unscientific. It's okay to mention that. You see, she's said here that she hasn't said it. I think it's unscientific. She said that an increasing number of doctors and scientists do, and to me that's the right approach, because that is true.
Well, if you remember back in the 80s, Ronnie, I think Hans Royce had a little booklet, didn't he? I think it was called 1,000 Doctors Against Vivisection. I think it was.
Yeah. So, we have, some of the organisations here that are kind of, working for, promoting non-animal methods and who are opposed to animal experiments. We've got animal-free research, and there's one called Safer Medicines. They're kind of run by doctors and scientists. They run, and interestingly enough, one of the women that was arrested on this action, she's a retired GP. She was a doctor.
Oh right, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So that I thought that's good. We kind of we need to not be afraid to talk about human supremacism and why it's wrong.
No, it's it's a good statement. Actually, going back to the press release, maybe we ought to do a program on how to write a press release.
Yeah, right? Because I mean, I've had things in our local newspaper. I mean, we did a street collection for the badgers for it was it the Badger Trust or something, I think it was, because it was to do with the cull and opposing the cull. And we did a street collection. I took some photos and I got it in the local paper, and that'll educate more people, not just about the cull, but I was talking about the connection with animal farming. It's the dairy industry and all that, and the best way people can oppose the badger cull is by not consuming dairy, not consuming any animal products. That got in the local paper, because your local paper, they'll cover. It doesn't have to be necessarily something like really big to get in.
No, it's easy to send them photographs now as well, isn't it? So
yes, and
right. Well, look, we're over the hour, and
but this
I'm being complained to
by a cat.
Yes,
but I think there's something, you see. This another reason why I kind of thought this action was kind of so important, and this is that basically you kind of I'm very much in, as and we both are, we're very much into education. I mean, I think that we have to educate people to go vegan. We have to educate people to oppose human supremacism, which is kind of a really, really important aspect of veganism, isn't it? That opposed to the exploitation and oppression of other animals by humans, indeed opposed to all exploitation and oppression. And you see it when a direct action takes place. I think there's four effects it can have. It's four effects that you kind of it could possibly have. On different groups of people, and the first thing is an effect on the government, or an attempt to affect the government, an attempt to change government policy, and we've kind of seen this in like the animal rebellion actions, Extinction Rebellion, where they're basically trying to create pressure to change government policy, aren't they? Like Extinction Rebellion want the government to kind of do something about fossil fuels mainly. Animal Rebellion, it's about plant-based future, isn't it? A lot of their big actions have been the government moving agriculture towards plant-based, right? So the demand is towards the government, right? And it's kind of sadly not a very hasn't really yielded results. I mean, what's happened is, what the government's done is, as in response to such actions, is to bring in draconian measures against protest. That's rather than kind of doing what the protesters have asked. They've done something to kind of take stronger action against the protesters. See, so I don't think that action at Sequani would have had really any effect on the government whatsoever. The second second kind of group of people that you can seek to influence by such actions are the companies, like Sequani itself, or the vivisection industry in general. That's another another group that could be affected by that action. Now, is that going to have much impact on them? Possibly little. I mean, there's evidence from the past with the ALF. During the ALF's campaign against a lot of it was aimed at vivisection. There was this kind of huge reduction. A huge reduction in the annual number of animal experiments that took place. They fell from over 6 million down to 3 million during the kind of sort of height of, in a sense, of ALF action against the vivisection industry. So there's evidence that the pressure of direct action can work in like reducing the number of animal experiments, because that's kind of what you want to do, really, because if you kind of even if actions result in kind of the closing of a laboratory or the closing of a of like a breeding place, if the demand still exists for the same number of experiments to take place, then those experiments would just be done elsewhere, or the animals will be supplied from somewhere else. So what you need is a general reduction in animal experimentation if you're going to spare animals. And there is evidence from the past that direct action can have an effect. How much effect in that sense an action like this can cause, I don't know. When we took the direct action with the ALF, it was very hard hitting stuff, and there was loads of it, so in a small way this might make some people in the industry think.
Do you think there's a danger though, Ronnie, that if we have a proliferation of this type of action, you're going to end up back in the day when you've got loads and loads of people on bail?
Well, it could happen now. Something that's kind of happened just in this week, I think, is that, and it's something that I kind of previously warned about and previously I've been worried about, is that that we're getting animal rebellion people now being charged with conspiracy. I think in relation to the actions they took against the dairy industry in September.
Yeah, well,
I was worried that this was a possibility, because, of course, the individuals, the things that the people are doing as individuals aren't really that great in terms of criminality. Like, you've got people that kind of just stood on top of silos with a flag and stuff, or people that kind of just locked themselves onto something.
The police and the prosecution service, they love conspiracy things.
Well,
because it means that all the people who are on the periphery get sucked in.
Because two things. Because first of all, it's easier to kind of it's easier to cobble together evidence to get a conviction than if you're just kind of if you're just prosecuting someone for just the action itself. And secondly, that people that only played a minor part can end up being
it's like guilt by association, isn't it?
Yeah, they can end up being do you want
to deal with this one from Colleen, Ronnie? Can people on bail do more direct action?
Yeah, they can. Yeah,
they can. But also, what they could do,
of course they can. I mean, they can't.
They can do door dropping and tabling.
Well, I mean, people on bail can do all sorts, but I mean, people on bail, and they do. There are a lot of people on bail that carry on, and what happens is if you're on, there's nothing to stop you doing it. But the thing is, if you're on bail already, if you're on bail and you get arrested again, then there's an increased chance of you being remanded in custody for that on that second occasion. This has happened to me in the past. Back in the day, I was on bail and I got done for something else, and I didn't get bail again. I got remanded in custody. They're not doing that so much now, and there's people that are on bail at the same time for like a multiple of different things. You see, so it doesn't stop you doing it, but it's just that if you get arrested again, the chances of having your bail refused that second time are greater.
Yeah, but I mean, as Colleen is saying here, is essentially you just downgrade what you're involved in. It just depends
on what risk you want to take. If you carry on doing direct action, you're taking a risk of being remanded in custody the next time you're arrested. You may not be, but there's a greater risk. So, but yeah, it doesn't stop you from doing like information stores. Doesn't stop you from delivering leaflets. It doesn't stop you from doing all those other things. And all those people that are involved in that action, they all do other things. They all do information stores. They all do kind of non-direct action methods of campaigning as well. So this is only one aspect of kind of what they do. So of course, if they didn't want to risk being arrested again and getting remanded in custody, they still carry on with the other things. And also, so anyway, let me carry on with this. So that's the effects on, like kind of where something this can affect like a company. But I think really and I think that with something like this is kind of only in a small way. I think if we had a proliferation of all these types of actions against the vivisection industry, it might have some kind of impact. It might kind of might make them think of like replacing the animal experiments with because in England there's only a really small number of animal experiments that they have to do by law. There's a certain category of experiments that have to be done on animals, but it's really only a small percentage. And so it's not even the law that's mandating that a lot of these experiments are done on animals. It's just what the companies just choose to do them on animals because that's what they've always done, and because they don't care.
Well, it's usually for legal reasons. This is just in. Speaking of that, did Mel get out? I'm not sure about that.
I think he's still in custody. I think he's now in custody until his trial. But I think the judge said, that if Mel comes up in front of him, I think this might have been the judge that kind of refused him bail. The judge said that he wouldn't impose a prison sentence on Mel because he would consider that Mel had already spent enough time in prison. So I think he's just waiting. Yeah, he's just waiting for his court hearing, and then hopefully he'll be released. But he has been in for quite a few months, and it's just disgraceful, really, for kind of what is a relatively.
Yeah, but all they'll do then is they'll just keep putting his trial back to make sure he does a
well. This tends to be what they're doing, because I think they're to what extent it's deliberate. I think it could be, but I think they're just overwhelmed. They're just overwhelmed with because of all the cuts. Everything's been cut, hasn't it? All the services, everything's been cut. So they've got less people to do things. So what they do is they just keep moving these things, forward in time, because they can't, they've got too much on their plate.
We've got a question from Maz. Yeah, I don't understand.
No, I don't understand that, Mel. If you, sorry, Mel, Maz, if you can type another one and explain that.
Yeah, we need clarification of the question.
So the thing, yes. So the thing is that, oh, blimey, where are you? Yeah. So yeah, there could be effect. If this action's kind of proliferates, it could exert some pressure for the reduction of animal experiments, by companies themselves, possibly. But I think what's more important and what's likely to kind of where this can be more effective is in terms of public awareness, because I think direct action can be used to raise public awareness, and I kind of think there's a couple of things need to be done, though, if that's going to be the case. And I think those two things kind of did happen with this action. I think, first of all, I think if you kind of want to have like sympathy from the public, and so that the public will think about the issues, I think it's kind of really important that it's a non-violent action, which this was. And the people kind of not trying to get away and stay in there to be arrested. I think, once again, in terms of sort of like the what you might call the propaganda effect, that's stronger in terms of public education than people like turning up in balaclavas and then just trying to get away. I think the propaganda effect of the public, of somebody saying, yeah, I did this and I'm fully prepared to stay here because I did nothing wrong. I think that's that creates a very powerful statement in terms of like in terms of creating public awareness, and I think that's kind of both those aspects were present in this action, and that's the first thing. I think the second thing is messaging. I think the messaging's got to be right. The messaging that comes out from the action has got to be something that raises awareness. And I think kind of this this mention of, human supremacism, that, we need to get people thinking about that, challenge the idea that, people somehow presume that humans are more important than other sentient animals. We have to challenge that at every turn. And if an action like this and the publicity arising from an action like this challenges that, I think that's really important, So I think the messaging is good. And I think we need to kind of do that all the time. And I think, one little, I'm kind of, a big supporter in a sense of animal rebellion, but sometimes I think their messaging, I've got a bit of a problem with their messaging where the human supremacism isn't the prime message that comes out of it. It's like when they were doing the actions against the dairy, it was more an environmental message, to do with the climate crisis and everything. That's really important. But the reason we've got the climate crisis is because of human supremacism. And the first thing to be said, if you're campaigning against the dairy industry, the first thing you say is about, what happens to the cows and the calves, isn't it? That's the first thing you talk about. And then after that, you talk about the climate. You talk about the human supremacism that's caused all this to happen in the first place. It's really important to have that as the prime aspect of your messaging. So I think it's important that the messaging's right if you're going to do that. And I think it was with this, I think, yes, so that's good. So it's direct action as education, I mean, we both think that education is really important, but I think direct action can be used as a very powerful form of education if it's done properly. And I think the fourth message is a message to the movement, or a message probably to vegans in general, because of course, the problem we have at the moment is that we've got this kind of, there's been a big increase in the number of people that regard themselves as vegans, but there hasn't been a corresponding increase in activism. That only a very tiny percentage of vegans are kind of active in any way. And, they're not active in getting out there and spreading the vegan message, they're not active in any way. And so if you have some people that are prepared to get arrested for animal liberation, I think that sends out a very powerful message to the non-active people. Here are these people that are prepared to get arrested. So why aren't you prepared to just give out a leaflet? And especially you've got someone in a wheelchair being arrested. That's very powerful. Somebody in a wheelchair has been arrested, right, for taking action for animal liberation. And there's you, an able-bodied person, and you're not even prepared to walk along the street delivering leaflets. You're not even prepared to be at a street store. I think it sends out a message, to those people. Come on, there's these people prepared to do a big thing. They're prepared to kind of, even go to jail. Cannot you do just something small? Cannot you do just something active yourself? And I think that, that's an important message as well.
Well, it's interesting, that one. Whether that's how the message would be received by the people who might be critical of actions per se. So they might just use it as another excuse for not doing it.
Well, I mean, possibly, but I think that kind of the majority of people who consider themselves vegan do so because they're concerned for the concern at the treatment of other animals. I mean, there's people that claim to be vegan for the environment, for health, and in fact, they're not really vegan because you can only be vegan for animal liberation. But there are a lot of people that kind of are, the reason why they're, they're vegan is because they believe in animal liberation. It's just that they don't do anything active to promote veganism. They don't actively campaign, not even in the smallest way. And we struggle desperately locally just to get people to deliver leaflets, just to spend an hour, at any time that they choose to deliver a few leaflets in their local area, or to come along and maybe spend half an hour helping at an information stall. We struggle desperately, And yet then by contrast, there's these 5 women that are prepared to get themselves arrested.
Yeah, it's a bit sad that though, isn't it, Ronnie?
Yeah. And come on, what's the matter with you? We all, this is a struggle we all need to be involved in, and this is the most horrendous thing that's ever happened on Earth, the oppression of other animals by humans. We've got 50,000 animals every second just being killed for the for the food industry, and then if you add up all the other ways that animals suffer and die because of human behavior, it could be twice as many as that. Come on, this is the most important struggle ever. This is the most important thing you could ever do in your life is to actively campaign against this, because just being vegan's not enough. Say just somebody saying that, saying, aren't I good, I'm a vegan. It's like someone saying, aren't I good, I didn't mug anyone. I'm not a mugger. You're kind of not doing something you shouldn't be doing anyway. You shouldn't be consuming animal products anyway. So activism is the moral baseline is activism, vegan activism.
I think I've summed it up for you.
Well, yes, and I hope people out there's kind of there'll be some people listening to this, some non-activists, get active, if it's just getting a few leaflets and getting involved with your nearest group that's doing a bit of action, because unless you do, we're not going to achieve animal liberation. And let what these women did, that laboratory be an example to you, and hopefully it'll be an example to other people. Like this idea of kind of direct action as a form of awareness raising. I think this could be used more, because you've got people that kind of, I mean, I'm quite happy to go around delivering leaflets and have a street stall and things like that. At one time I wasn't. At one time I wanted to get out there and kick ass. Obviously, like we both did. And I don't.
Quite a revelation, really. Nobody knew that about you.
No, they didn't know that. But I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that now. And I'm quite happy doing the more quiet things. But there are people that kind of want to do something more active. That's kind of, they feel that. And this is a kind of way that they can, be more active, but they can kind of be more active in a way that's educational, because we have to be, we have to have at least a substantial minority of people, probably 25-30% of people opposed to human supremacism and believing in animal liberation. If ever we're going to really change the culture of society, which will result in political change.
Well, the numbers on that are contested. I mean, some people go as low as 10%, but
it might be as low as 10%. But we certainly need a lot more than we got now.
Yeah,
and so the educating ordinary people is so vitally important if we're going to create fundamental change. and this is a way that in challenging human supremacism, this is a way that direct action can be used as a form of education, and the people that feel that they kind of want to get more active, they can use activism in like this in an educational way. And I think it could be a very, very important aspect of our movement.
Yeah, well, I think that's possibly a good place to leave it for this week, Ronnie. Because given your cough, I want you still to be alive.
It's because I need another cup of tea. It's been an hour since I've had a cup of tea. So I need my fix.
Yeah,
but did I ever get back on what that was? I don't know. I've not been looking at the.
Oh, do you want that last?
Yeah. Did he explain?
Oh, yeah, something to do with. Do you think that the government has changed the laws because of our success or our activities and stuff? I think that was the gist of it.
Well, they certainly did. I mean, in terms of the ALF and groups like Shack and Speak, who had considerable success, yes, the government brought in new laws. They encouraged.
Oh, they started to apply existing laws in weird ways, didn't they?
The courts were encouraged to apply old laws, like blackmail, for instance.
Yeah, blackmail. But then again, you see, that's one of the worst things that they started to do was conspiracy trials. If they're going to start doing that again, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. Well, I remember, you know, when I was, you know, way back, you know, when I first got involved in things, you never heard of conspiracy, and I think the first time that they started charging people with conspiracy, and it wasn't to do with animal liberation, it was to do with, I think it was picketing, some pickets and stuff. There was uproar all about the civil liberties. This is terrible. They're bringing in conspiracy. It's an attack on civil liberties. There was a huge fuss about it, right? But now they charge people with conspiracy, and you know, no one seems to bat an eyelid. You know,
that was to do with flying pickets, wasn't it?
Flying pickets, yeah. I think that was, you know, but they kind of tend to be, you know, sort of just after that, they started using it more because we were done for conspiracy, weren't we? When we were on trial at Sheffield, that was a conspiracy,
right, Ronnie. I'm going to bring this to a close.
Yeah, before
I'm worried about your health, my young man.
Yeah, before the cough carries me off. Yeah, because because next week I need to make sure that I am
still alive, but it doesn't look good so far, does it? See you, everyone.
See you next week, folks.